So I am now going to go to sort of link our journeys, if I may. Now, Jazz FM, thank goodness, was born in the early 90s in the UK. And Ms. Fitzgerald came over to launch it, I will never forget it, in about 1993. And it was the very first time that music was played during the daytime that reflected my record collection. The first time ever. I'm born early 70s. Wow. So when I was about 2021, I've always had taste that's, belies my years, as they say. And they played, to their enormous credit to this very day, Jazz FM played music from this in my hand. And this is the actual copy that I must have purchased in the mid-90s of Old Devil Moon by Your Good Self. It's in my hand right now. And this was my introduction to you. And they played the track, You're Not in Love, constantly, thank God, for months and months and months. And from that, this is now in my hand. Tell us about Old Devil Moon and how that came about. Right there.
Oh. There's an album prior to that, Self-Portrait. And I had now moved, I had left New York. I am no longer living in New York. And now I'm Los Angeles based. And I started my little, you probably have one too, a little studio in your home, your apartment, or where your flat, where you're still
a basic recording rig, absolutely, yeah.
So I rigged this thing, and I'm in a new place now. I'm in Los Angeles. I don't live in New York. I'm not in the, the high-rise buildings and with the neighbors below, that stuff. I'm now in a cute little cottage. And I made one of the rooms in this cute little cottage my studio space, okay? So I am still in pursuit of a major record deal.
Yes.
I walked out of New York, never got that in New York, but I'm in pursuit of that still.
The Holy Grail.
Yes, indeed. So now I have this little setup in my home. Most of my work was taking me into Europe, taking me everywhere but Los Angeles. I rarely, to this day, perform in Los Angeles. Right. Maybe, if I'm lucky, twice a year. And it's like 20 years now, and I still find that I just don't work here twice a year. So I had a lot of time in the early years to just apply, just go into my studio and write. So I wanted a recording contract. My manager at the time had an end with a label that at the time was called JVC. Right. Okay. And that's that record you have is my second and last recording. I did 2 records for JVC.
Show that again. There you go.
So this is around the time that I was able to upgrade my recording equipment. I was now no longer working in cassettes. I was working in ADAT. I had 8 tracks.
Wow.
And I remember to this day, I never overdubbed anything. So I had to, I didn't punch in, even though I could, I didn't want to learn how to do that. This is before computers. This is before any of that. Yes. So I would spend every day working, writing for hours and hours and recording everything. And enough to maybe I got about 20 songs in, still trying to get a contract. And I had written for a year, and I kept giving these little demos, 10 songs here, 10 songs there. And the producer kept saying, oh, write some more. Give me more. I need more. And I'm thinking, I've given you like 25 songs already. So at that point, I said, you know what? I'm not writing anything else until I get some kind of a deal memo. You're going to have to offer me something. This is insane. Yeah. So Old Devil Moon was the first. I finally got the recording contract with JVC, Self-Portrait, beautiful record with I sang with a live orchestra, glorious. But I'm still writing. A lot of the songs that didn't end up on that record found their way to Old Devil Moon, but I'm still doing standards. So I'm covering Star Eyes, I'm covering Old Devil Moon, right? But I'm doing my writing too. But there was a new device, sequencer or something, that had come along. So now I'm beginning to explore other ways of arriving at an end production or a song, if you will. You're Not in Love was
love that song.
That was my
the opening chords.
Oh. Whoa, I was just about to say. So now you see, as the musician in me is looking for other ways harmonically to define Carmen Lundy's sound over and above her voice. I'm looking for ways for you to go, oh, I know that right away. That person hasn't sung a note, but I know right now that song is Carmen's, right? Miss Lundy. So I was in that phase of my writing where I was looking for those supportive sounds that were also me, that were also Carmen, even before I sang. And that opening, those chords you're talking about.
I've got goosebumps on the back of my arm the size of mountains right now, telling you. See, it works. It worked. It reached me all the way in London as a 20-something-year-old guy. It works.
Wow. And that's, so we're talking about You're Not in Love. And that was just this. I was just looking for I wanted everything around I just wanted these big chords. I wanted big chords. I love that sound in the music. And You're Not in Love was a study, if you will, in it's really more like a study in composition, how to use, I'm going to use a term now that some listeners may not understand, but the 2 minor 7 to the 5/7 dominant chord resolving to the major chord, the minor 7/2 chord to the dominant 7/5 chord resolving to the major, okay? And that in and of itself is how a lot of jazz music is expressed, through this particular harmonic progression, okay? But on top of that harmonic progression are all kinds of ways to alter it, to articulate it differently, to reshape, to leave a note out, add an extra note. There's a lot of ways to manipulate that sound to get a fullness and a richness. And I was just deep into studying how those different combinations of chord progressions can result in a melody. So I'm thinking about Stevie Wonder around this time, okay? And all the music, I used to sing all of that stuff, the 70s.
Yeah.
All of my gigs in Miami was, the old standards and Stevie Wonder and whoever else, Shaka Khan and Rufus or whoever. But I was doing all that stuff. But Stevie was he was kind of like the bridge for me.
Right.
And his composition was a sort of bridge me between my understanding of jazz writing and just kind of pop music, R&B at the time. So Stevie was he was someone that I could take away some of his ideas and sort of affirm them from a compositional side and the jazz theoretical side of things. So what you're talking about in Old Devil Moon was all of that. And I did a lot of the writing of that. I was in Toronto, Canada, for a 3-month stint. And I was renting a house that had a grand piano in it. Oh my God.
Excellent. There you go. That's all you need. Never mind a fridge and a bed, curtains on the windows. Just you have a piano, you're fine. Yeah, that's it. Don't need to eat.
I recall writing a lot of that music from there too. But those 2 records, those 2 JVC records were real. Well, it really started with my first album with Just in Time. This is Carmen Lundy, because that was the first time I'd ever recorded all originals.
Right.
Every song. I think there were 9 songs on that record, if I'm correct. But that was the first album where I just said, it's an independent label. They kind of give you a little bit more freedom than the established commercial, So, but that was just I had a producer who gave me the liberty, the freedom to just not to worry about the budget. It was going to be taken care of.
Wow.
Just do you, Carmen, just right. We got it. You know, I was very sick during that time too, I might add. I was terribly sick during the actual recording of Old Devil Moon. I was really sick. Like I thought that was maybe my last record.
Oh, wow.
That's how ill. Yeah. So there were a lot of things personally happening at the time that were not good.
Yes.
And so what you're holding and the goosebumps you're getting, I'm getting too, because that particular time was not easy for me. And even the song, You're Not in Love, you know,
Yes.
even the lyric, you know.
You never hold me like before. I never feel your touch anymore. We never kiss or share a smile, not even for a little while. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah. It's in my consciousness wherever I go. Beautiful song. And Jazz FM played that to death. And as I've said, prior to that, you might have heard that on a niche station at 2 or 3 in the morning. So to hear You're Not in Love on heavy rotation on the blessed Jazz FM was amazing. I just want to talk about another track on the album, the last track on the album, and I've played that on my show, and it's Love Me Forever. And I know that on that track is on backing vocals another lady who you know, your paths are very similar in as much as approaching the industry on your terms, a songwriter, composer, producer, Ms. Gwen Guthrie. What was it like working with her?
And Gwen Guthrie. Oh, that was so wonderful. Okay, so we recorded that in New York. We recorded Old Devil Moon in New York. And there's a singer, oh God, you have to look at the back of it,
Yes,
but her name, she worked with me on Stevie Wonder's recordings. She was the
Let me
background
do that
vocals.
now. You keep talking and I'll look now.
So it's Dennis Collins, Tawatha A.G., Gwen Guthrie, and there's another lady.
Okay, so let me, shall I run down the person on that for you?
Yes.
Okay, so of course your lead vocal, wow, Billy Childs, wow, on piano, synthesizer, Harry Whitaker, electric bass, Victor Bailey, drums, Omar Hakim, congas, bongos and tambourine, Myra Casales, background vocals, Lonnie Groves, Gwen Guthrie.
That's her.
Right. Lonnie Groves. Right.
Yes. So she was straight out of all that background work with Stevie. Okay.
Right.
So I've got top.
Yeah.
Right?
Billy
And
Childs on piano. Wow.
And Billy Childs and Harry Whitaker. Harry Whitaker is the pianist on Good Morning Kiss and The Lamp Is Low. That's him. Right, and he was a Roberta Flack's accompanist. A little history there.
Wow.
He was a Roberta Flack's accompanist, and he's the guy when you hear Roy Ayers go, "Everybody loves the sunshine."
Okay, that's him. No way.
That's Harry Whitaker.
Wow. Okay. See, nothing by accident. Nothing by accident here. Nothing. No.
Nothing. No. So that record was so much fun to make. And Gwen, those background sessions were wonderful. And I wrote everything out. You know, that was like back in the day, you know, I would write everything out note for note.
Right.
Because at least the musician would know what I wanted and what I heard.
It's a language. Better. Yeah.
It is indeed. And I have photographs from that recording session of us kind of hovering around around the piano, working stuff out before we actually did tracks. But Love Me Forever is a song that I wrote in the 80s. Right. Okay, that just didn't get recorded until 1997 or whatever. Right. But I recorded Love Me Forever. I wrote that song in the 80s and performed it a lot on all of my gigs. And back in the 90s, the 80s, there were so many. The Brecker Brothers owned a club called 7th Avenue South. And everybody, you know, I met Omar Hakim there and Victor Bailey there and some of the guys on the record that you mentioned. Harry Whitaker I met during that time, early 80s. And that song was written long before it was recorded. And it was one of those songs where this is what I ran into a lot, okay? Right. That song is straight up, that is not intended to be a swing tune. Can we just agree? That is not.
Yeah, because of course, you know, lyrically you're thinking of a big heart-busting, you know, love song of yearning and whatever, but it's so not that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So the song itself did not necessarily fit into this, oh, she's a jazz singer, why is she doing that? You know. So a lot of the songs on that record, even You're Not in Love, they're not exactly this coming out of this book of Errol Fitzgerald, you understand?
Yes.
You see, and I ran into a lot of kind of, how should I, you know, there was a lot of resistance to that because it's like, is she on the fence? She's on the fence. Is she a jazz singer or isn't she? And all that stuff was going on. And I'm a child I'm from this time. Yes. I'm born of this time. Yeah. So I don't think it's necessary for me to just discard part of my history just to satisfy a few purists. No. What the heck? No. And so that Old Devil Moon, for as much as the UK played it, the United States did not.
Oh God, yeah, that's
as much as you guys have supported everything I've done from the very first record I ever made, the United States has not. Okay.
Wow.
They do not and have not. So when you say, oh, wow, you know, you've got a Grammy nomination, I don't know if it's COVID, people sitting and returning to what matters most in their lives, to hear Carmen Lundy's music for what it always has been. But it's always been this. It's just that for what you're talking about 80s, and in America, no one, you know, I couldn't even get a job. I put out a top 5 album, Good Morning Kiss, and no one would hire me in the United States. So there was a dichotomy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was in Europe on tour with Sophisticated Ladies, a Broadway show of Duke Ellington's music, great music, but I wasn't touring Carmen Lundy's successful album, Good Morning Kiss. No one would play it. No one would hire me.
Wow.
So I think that, I don't know if I was being punished. I don't know. I don't know if it was a sort of like, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, so we're not. I don't understand.
You know, what I think, and what, since I've been a record collector since the age of 13, and what I have seen as a fan and as a collector, and what I've learned of the industry, is that the industry as it was, it had to put you in a box in order to sell you. It had to put you on a particular shelf, right? And a lot of your stories are not uncommon, sadly. For example, Jodie Watley, who very much like yourself is a lady that's always been in control of her career post Shalimar, and she created a song called Learn to Say No with George Michael. It's funky, poppy, and rocky. They wouldn't really now. Now at the time they were both at the top of their game, top of the charts, both of them. They would not release that for anything. So sadly, yeah, exactly. That expression right there. So it's not uncommon. So I've seen and lived through as a consumer the era of the 3 or 4 big labels. Epic was one, and you had Columbia, where everybody was signed to. And now they've all but disappeared, but the music and great music is still being made. So you wonder what that was all about, because you're still doing what you're doing now to the same standard. They've gone, you're still here.
Wow. Wow, that's very, very, very profound.
Yeah, statement. That makes, because, you know, for me, as I said, when Jazz FM was born in the UK, it was the very first time I heard music on the radio in daylight hours that was in my collection. And even now, I don't know. There is a dichotomy, because I've seen you twice here, one at Ronnie Scott's and once at Pizza Express. You were touring Soul to Soul when you came to Pizza Express, if I'm not mistaken, which I also have here. So we're going to talk about that album very, very shortly for one specific track that I know you have a story to tell about. But yeah, so at that time, it was just a revelation to me, and it was a pleasure, because that is how I discovered you, through Jazz FM. So I have Jazz FM to thank for this conversation that we're having now. So let's move on to Soul now. The song that made this an essential purchase for me was the song Grace. Now tell us all about that, please.
This is fun. This is funny. I've been telling the story of that song lately. I just told that story on a flight to Los Angeles 2 nights ago. The lady next to me in my seat wanted to know the story of Grace.
That's because it's a great story.
And wow. Okay.
Brace yourself.
It's a big one. There's a lot.
We have some time. We have time if you have time.
Okay. Okay, very quickly, let's see if I can do this. And we're in my studio right now. This is my work. This is where I do everything. And I spend at least 5 to 7 hours a day at work on some level here. Yes. And I've been teaching myself guitar. I've been teaching myself to play guitar because for a number of reasons. I have too many guitars in my home not to play any of them. So at one time during the 18 years I worked on the faculty at the Kennedy Center for Betty Carter's Jazz Ahead program, one of those years I took an instrument, a guitar with me, because I needed to kind of cull all of the ideas that were happening during the day and come back to my hotel room and just be able to apply some of the things I'm learning. And I have this guitar and I didn't know what to do with it, but I saw Chip Jackson, who's the bass chair. He was walking back to the hotel with an instrument that looked like a viola, but he's a bassist. Mm-hmm. So I said to Chip, what are you carrying? He said, oh, it's a child guitar. I travel with it when I'm done. I said, you're kidding. I did the same thing. Can you give me a lesson? Please give me a lesson. So now I've gotten bitten by the guitar bug because the lesson he gave me was so full. And because of my understanding of harmony and piano, I could relate immediately to what he was showing me. So then I became this, focused on nothing but guitar. So now I got stuck because when you practice a lot, you make mistakes.
Yes, of course.
A lot of mistakes.
Yes.
And the mistake sometimes becomes a brilliant idea if you hear it that way. So I'm making all kinds of mistakes and I got this idea. So now I'm absorbed in this one idea. It's so repetitious that I just exhausted every possibility with this thing. So I let it go. Okay. I said, move on. That's all this is going to be. Let it go. And then it just haunted me. So I thought, I know what, I'll just think of a hymn or something that'll keep me grounded in this song, so that as I work, at least this melody will give me somewhere, lead me somewhere. So that's what happened. So I picked Amazing Grace, the hymn, as my guide to kind of help me with this guitar
that makes
stuff.
Sense. Right.
So now I'm stuck. It got me. I was even worse because now I'm thinking, oh, Amazing Grace. Oh my God, all this stuff is happening to me. So I decided to do research on the song. I decided to research the origins of this song and learned that it was written by a slave trader. I learned that Amazing Grace was written by a slave trader, okay? John Weber, who got out there with his passengers in this, horrible conditions out in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere. And it came upon a storm that threatened everyone's life. Okay, this is the true story. Wow. It threatened everyone's life on the ship, the storm. So of course it's, listen, but underneath in the hull of the ship, there's this sound, this melody that's constant. And people shackled down, they can't move it, and they're just singing their way through this storm.
Oh my goodness.
They're just this melody. So after hours and hours of what God knows what that must have been like for everyone on the ship, much less the slaves in conditions that we all know too well what that is. And he's out there, throw this one over, get rid of this, whatever he's doing. So the storm passes. I did not know this, but my research tells me that his parents were staunch religious Christians, okay? But he's like, I'm going to go make some money and take these and this is what I'm going to do. But he gets out there, and this music is constant during this entire storm. He hears this music from underneath. So when the storm settles and he looks around and he's pinching himself, he's still alive. He logs what happened to his ship that day with a major guilt trip. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. This music coming up from the hull of the ship with these people that I've shackled and imprisoned for the rest of their life. And this sound is what saved a wretch like me. I'm a wretch, but I was lost, but I'm found now. I realize the horrors that I've been doing.
Wow.
I realize this horror. Okay. I realize that this is not, and my parents taught me better than this. Okay. But that's what that song is.
Wow.
That's what he's singing about. The sound. You know, how sweet the sound. It's like, what? We sung that for hundreds of years. We've sung that now, right?
Absolutely.
How sweet the sound. What sound?
Yeah.
Nobody ever asked.
No.
It was the sound that was being sung by the slaves in the bottom of his ship.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
When you see that video. So now here's the other part to this. Now I realize this. I'm like, oh, so I now know this. So I go back to my guitar and I'm still like crunching away at whatever. So I had done the South African, I had done the film fest, I had done the jazz festival, Cape Town Jazz Festival, right? So I'm singing for the former president and Becky, and I'm like, oh, I'm just in such a place of, I'm in awe of what this opportunity is brought. And Elizabeth tweets for Carmen. So Elizabeth is tweeting, right? And some person she's tweeting with now, we're back in America, and she's got some connection with a South African young man, and we're tweeting constantly. And I'm like, Elizabeth, tweeting, what is it anyway? What are we doing? So we get this tweet from this guy who we met in South Africa, who says he's coming to Los Angeles. He's curating the inaugural South African film and film and music festival. Okay. Wow. So he invites us to this incredible ceremony. Hugh Masekela is one of the artists.
Wow.
One of the artists. And it's giving you a broad perspective on the South African culture, right? And this is all happening in Los Angeles. So we go, and afterwards he comes over, of course, gracious as always. And he said, well, you have to meet my friend Simpiwe Dana. You have to meet da-da-da. So he's introducing us to the artists, right? So we're at the very end of the night. Everything is done. We're toasting a glass of white wine over congratulations on your very first time in Los Angeles. And then he blurts out of nowhere, I have no place to stay. What do you mean you have no place to stay? So apparently we're checking out at the hotel on Monday, but they extended their visit because they were in America for the first time. And they had been promised accommodations, which did not come through.
Okay. Yeah.
Now they're stuck with this flight, that doesn't leave for an extra few days, and they don't know what to do. So we said, well, you can stay with us. And I think he was surprised. I don't think he really believed us, sort of a LA Flakers or whatever, but he didn't believe us. But he and Simpiwe, the goal was Simpiwe wanted to perform at a couple of things that she'd been invited to. They were promised to accommodate her, and they did not. So she was here to perform to see if she could work her name or her just some recognition here in the United States to return for maybe a tour or something like that. So it was a smart, and you can understand the reason for this, right?
Yes.
So they had no place to stay. So I said, stay with us. So now they're here. We actually picked them up from the hotel. They're shocked. They can't believe we actually meant it. And we bring them to our home, and we're, chatting, and I'm trying to, make interesting dishes that show them a little bit about the culinary side of Black American culinary things, right? And his name is Loopy, and Loopy says, well, Carmen, why don't you show Simpiwe some of the things you're working on? Because they know I have a studio. They've seen my home, right? So I bring them both into my studio, and I, find something to play for them. Oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh, this is what I'm working on. And yes, no, that's nice. And then it occurred to me, I had this song that I had been working on that I was so stuck. I could not move forward with this song. And I played it for her. And I explained to her the same story that I just told you about the history of Amazing Grace. And in her wonderful way, she says, I did not know that. Oh, I did not know that. And she's of the age where she is pre-apartheid.
Yes.
She's post-apartheid, right? So she goes, let me have a pen and paper. And she begins to write in a Xhosa language.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she goes, where's your record button? I said, right. Then she started singing, and all the meters went right into the right. So I adjust the microphone for her, just to me, and she begins to sing. We had walked for so long with our heads to the ground.
Oh, that's so good.
And she's saying that right here in my studio, 10 feet away where I'm talking to you from.
Yeah.
Wow. So that whole time, what you're listening to was the way it happened in this room.
Wow.
And I didn't, she was like right in the middle of what she had done, and she sang whatever she had written. And there I was, and I just started to sing. It's been a long time.
Do you know
and I still to this day what?
Sorry, do you know the line the line that really gets me in that? When you come in and say we've forgotten the beauty of the past. Oh, my dear. Wow. So you see, once again, it's not by accident. It was happenstance, you could say, but the intention was there.
The manifestation of that individual having to come from South Africa into this room to bring forth this story. I mean, there were so many things about us that were similar. It was uncanny. There were a lot of things about us that we saw that we were the same. It was almost like my South African sister entered I don't know, there was a manifestation of it that was so magical that you could not deny. And I have not seen her since then.
You mentioned that on stage, I think, somewhere. But
I haven't seen her.
I think it might have been when I saw you at Pizza Express. You said you've never seen her again.
I haven't seen Simply since then.
Wow.
So I know that but we were both so enriched by that experience. I mean, my life changed as a result of that's great. It took that for that song to happen, because I had already given up on it. So if not for her perspective, having lived what she knows. So when you look, and I just got a notification from YouTube last week, because the end of the year, that's the most watched video of anything I've ever heard.
And I've watched it about, I don't know, 1,000 times or more. So I'm partly responsible for that. I'll admit.
And there's the image of a woman. It's like I'm saving her. She's coming out of the water.
Yes, I know.
That awful boat, that ship, off boat ride, I'll call it. And that's my sister who was visiting from Miami. Wow. So that's my sister. Yeah.
Great story.
But
great album. And another, how can I put this? Another installment of my journey through your music. So we're going to go to the next album that I can produce in my hot little hand. And this album here, called Modern Ancestors, garnered you your first Grammy Award nomination. Please tell us how this masterpiece was born, Miss Lundy.
It's a continuum.
Right.
I'm a student of the music. I've observed quite a few things now. I've traveled the world. I've seen other cultures. I've seen the beauty of humanity. I've seen the worst. I hope maybe now I've seen the worst. I hope it can't get worse than this.
Yes, we will hope so. We have
lived through the mistake that America made when they chose that person over that wonderful woman, Hillary Clinton. The mistakes, the it was almost like the eruption of a volcano that had been sitting, just erupting, this wonderful time in American history, our first Black president, to turn into this horror story that we're still living. And out of hatred and out of deceit and out of all of these dark emotions that we have had to live through, the world has seen a pandemic, something we would never would have expected if we had the kind of leadership that would have prevented such a thing from happening. And all of this occurring and looking back, and someone knows that I collect musical instruments. So they gave me this antique banjo. And, you know, the banjo for American Black people is not something, you don't see Black people playing banjos in America.
No. And you know what? Hold that beautiful thought one moment, because prior to this interview now, I was listening to an album that Steve Martin, who's a banjo meister, recorded with Edie Brickell. And it's fantastic. And knowing that, you know, the way that the banjo is perceived in the States, I chuckled, because here I am, a young Black man born in Britain of, you know, Caribbean ancestry, and I love, it's a great album. It's a great album, great songs, great. Steve Martin is a great banjo player.
Yes, he is.
So once again, you know, who'd have thought? And here you have a banjo on the cover of Modern Ancestors.
Yeah, and that was really, it was funny, that artwork occurred during the process of writing Modern Ancestors. It's the wood, everything about that took months to render. It was not something I just had all these pieces, then I just put them together.
Yeah.
It took months and months and months to just render that visual as you see it. And it's huge. It's a big piece.
Wow. Okay.
But the writing, you know, the songs, A Time for Peace, Burden Down, you know, we still don't have in America. You know, I still, in my wallet, I keep rond of a rond in my wallet, 50 rond with
right,
Mandela's image on it, because I'm still waiting for the day that I had a bill in my wallet with a Black person on it. There's an American dollar with a Black face on it. Right. And when you listen, when I on my video of Burden Down, this track 2 of this record, the first thing you see is a $40 bill with Harry Tubman. Right. I mean it. When they have a $20 bill with Harry Tubman.
Yeah.
This album was a statement. It was a carryover from Code Noir, of how wonderful the world is because of the contribution of people of color.
Yes, absolutely.
The new world as we know it.
Absolutely.
And the contribution of those people that started somewhere deep in Africa millions of years ago, have really given the world so many special things that we enjoy. All the things that we don't even realize are contributions from people of color.
Absolutely.
And it's a time in my life where recognizing it is not enough.
No, it's not.
It has to be acknowledged. It has to be brought forth. It has to be sung. It has to be
acted upon.
Taking ownership of that I know is part of what makes this a beautiful planet. And I still know that Africa is the only place in the world that you're going. You have to go there to see that the giraffe, the rhino, this is the dwelling. Yes. This is the land. Absolutely. And the animal life, the wildlife, all the gold, the diamonds, the richness, the information that we shared with the world when we discovered all things about space and the universe, and how just so many things.
Yeah.
So modern ancestors, the ones that I was in the room when they were playing, that Dizzy Gillespie, that's a modern ancestor.
Yes,
that Ella Fitzgerald, that's a modern ancestor. I'm young enough and old enough to have been in the room when they did what they did. Miles Davis, those to me are the modern ancestors.
Absolutely.
My mother's generation, my grandmother's generation. That's who I'm talking about in modern ancestors. That's who I'm singing to.
Wonderful.
And singing because of.
Wonderful. Let's get it up again. So, you know, people know what they're looking for when they go out to purchase, because I'm old fashioned in that way. I like to have things in my hot little hand. Okay. And I will lead on by saying, I had Code Noir on my Amazon account, but when I deleted my Amazon account for various reasons, that album went with it. I didn't back it up. So I can't whip that out and show our listeners and
the actual
right, but it's beautiful artwork, gorgeous artwork. I'm guessing by your good self.
You can see that on my website.
Yes, yes, of course.
You can see it on my website.
carmenlundy.com. Now, I briefly want you to tell me about my favorite song from that. It's a very short song, but nonetheless more impactful and powerful. Okay. Now, Have a Little Faith. That's my number one pick for Code Noir.
Code Noir?
Yeah. Have a Little Faith. That's my track. So can you explain to our listeners and our viewers something about that?
I don't know. Whenever I introduce that song, I say to the audience, this song means nothing.
Oh, okay.
I always say this song means absolutely nothing. There are very few words, very few lyrics in that song.
Yeah,
right?
it's very and it's very short relatively, yeah, but it's amazing.
A little scatting, and it's like
yeah,
la, la,
yeah.
Right? I can't tell you anything. It just
that's fine.
It was just sort of one of those things that happened, and I allowed it. I didn't overthink it. I didn't say, "Oh, I got to write for lyrics. You need lyrics for this." No, just do "Ooh La La, Carmen." You'll be fine. And I just was having fun.
Yeah.
For me, that was the most. It was like a release from all the serious songs on the record. It was a release from all the the black and blues and the other songs on the record. It was just like this lighthearted.
Jazz can be fun. Let's get that out there. Jazz can be fun. It can be irreverent. It can be lighthearted. Absolutely. So yeah. Okay then. Excellent. Wonderful. Which brings us to the latest musical incarnation of your creativity, Fade to Black. Now tell us how that project was born.
Fade to Black. I was commissioned in 2019. I received a commission from Chamber Music America, a grant to write. So I submitted. I learned of this grant program, and did not receive a reward or an award the first time. So I tried again. That's another thing. You don't succeed.
Absolutely.
So I tried again and received this grant in 2019. And at the time, because of the way that my track and the way the music has evolved over the course of all these albums, and there's so many in between the ones that you mentioned, the course is that you're always at work. I'm always at the craft. I'm always writing. I'm always working towards something. Certain songs take longer to realize than another. Like that one didn't take that much. And some of the other songs on Modern Ancestors took years. So there's a carryover. There's one or two songs that don't make it on a record. Then they kind of linger. It's like, I'm over here. Can you revisit me?
Yeah.
Well, that's the way things started when I received the grant. I knew I had a couple of things churning. But I didn't at the time, no one knew that we would find ourselves in the throes of a pandemic.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So in 2019, when I received the grant, I got, I think that was the end of 2019, and I think my last concert date before we shut down was in New York at the Jazz Standard, and that was December of 2019. So now it's January, and my last concert was January 25th at the Kennedy Center.
Right.
In Washington, D.C. That was the last time I was on stage, the 25th of January. So I decided to...
Isn't that Carmen Lundy Day? Sorry, in Miami.
It is.
See?
It is.
Yeah. I'm not blowing the proverbial smoke. I am indeed a fan, so...
Wow. Yes, indeed it is.
We'll talk about that later, as if it needs explaining. You have a day. There you go.
So now we're sort of in this lockdown mode, right? Can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. Watch out, you know. So two things I started to do. I started making masks. I just took my sewing machine out and just started making masks with Elizabeth. And I was just making masks and giving them to people who needed them in some of the hospitals, because we were all trying to figure out what to do next.
Absolutely.
And I had just done 3 episodes with Rhonda Hamilton, who's a radio personality here, and she's like our Jazz FM. And she was but she moved to Los Angeles,
right,
to work with Sirius XM, and so forth. So we started a little talk show format, and we did 3 episodes of that. We did one for Modern Ancestors. We talked to Benny Maupin, the great tenor saxophonist, who's also on Soul to Soul, and we interviewed Marvin Smitty Smith, one of my the history of my drummers from my career, and he also. So we got 3 episodes of that show in, and then everything shut down. So now I know I have this grant, but they notify me that due to the pandemic, that they're pushing back the deadline. So they pushed the deadline back 3 times.
Right.
This gave me room to create. But initially I said, okay, you know, this is obvious that I could write about this pandemic, but why do that? I'm not going to write about a pandemic. You know, that's why do that. But then as we got deeper into this thing, my brother got sick and passed away. My younger brother, Freddie, passed away before we got the vaccine. And then they pushed it back. And then my sister passed away from cancer the following year. And then we had a cancer diagnosis more in my immediate life. So there were all these terrible, and then we had all the murders, and then the George Floyd thing with the murder on television. And then we were supposed to be in a lockdown, but America was exploding in the streets. We were protesting. People were joining us all over the world with this protest, and all these things started happening.
Right.
And I'm a composer. I'm a writer. I'm being asked to write. I can't ignore this pandemic. I can't ignore having lost 2. I can't ignore this madness that's going on. So so this record, I did not have a title. Let me just say this. I did not. And so during the same time, because we were in lockdown for more than 2 years, singers, we couldn't do anything. I couldn't perform. Forget about it, right? So I decided to take some raw footage that I had of my mother's gospel group. They had never recorded before, but I have the footage of their first recording and their interviews. So I decided to edit that. So I sat here, worked on the music for what is now called Fade to Black, and I edited 9 hours of footage.
Wow.
To tell the story of my mother's gospel group, which actually did win in October. We showed it, we filmed, we screened it here in Los Angeles at the Downtown LA Film Festival, and we won Best Music Documentary for my film. But all of that took place during the writing of Fade to Black. So I didn't have a title for this. I just was writing, and I thought I have to deliver this because now the deadline is looming, and I must.
Yes.
So we have to figure out how to get into the studio safely. We have to figure out, this is May now, May of 2022. We had to figure out how to safely get the musicians in the recording studio. And I can remember my amazing engineer, Don Murray, just so amazing. We've done 5 or 6 records together now. And Don set up the studio so beautifully. So none of us had to be great about the space, and how we were going to be able to fully realize this. We ended up mixing for 2 weeks afterwards. So we spent a long time mixing, which was great because you hear things. The longer you spend, the better it gets, I think. Especially when you've got a great engineer like Don Murray. So Fade to Black was like, what do I call? That needs a title. So it's interesting how this album is called Fade to Black, but Fade to Black was the farthest thing
Yes.
From any of this, from the inception to the last day of mixing, I had no title for this record.
Right.
But things were happening around us. All of these things were going on. And as well, I had been working on a film. So it had this double meaning for me. And I know that it resonates in other ways for other people. And at the very end, I asked the Chamber of Music America for an additional funding because the price of everything had gone through the roof from the time of the
yes.
pandemic.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
The recording costs were not what they were when I received the grant. So they wouldn't agree to an additional funding. So there I was having to manifest the completion of this project. So I decided to use one of my sculptures as the cover because I didn't have the funds to make another photo shoot. And, if I have the stylist come in, it's still COVID, and have, all these things happen just to finish the album. So rather than be concerned with all those additional costs, but I wanted the quality of this record to speak more than the album cover, we ended up using one of my sculptures as the cover because it made sense at the time.
Yeah, beautiful. It appears to be almost like a mannequin that's adorned with paint,
dripping and dripping in color.
Yeah,
dripping in color.
sticks in the mind. Well done. Good. Wonderful. So, creative energy is often alchemical. Energy is almost alchemical because it can be negative and be turned into something positive or great that's artistic. So I love that. And I think, any artist, whatever their medium, worth their salt, yes, you can take a good time, a bad time, a political situation, and channel it into your art and create something of value. And long may that be the case. So, Ms. Lundy, we are now in 2022. 2023 is approaching. And once again, we'll come full circle. And the Grammys are imminent. And of course, you're nominated for Best Jazz Vocal Album. I'm like you, if I know even less about how the Grammys work. So if this, when we put this out on the station, if it can help in some way, because I know that I'm aware that people campaign for Oscars, actively campaign for Oscars. So I'm not sure how it works in the Recording Academy, but if this particular interview on the Stella Salt Show on No Barriers Radio can help in your push and your momentum towards, being given what you so richly deserve, what all of your fans know and have known for many years that you so richly deserve, then mission accomplished. Now, I have one last question to ask you. Ms. Lundy, you will be remembered, but how would you like to be remembered?
A woman of integrity. A woman with a lot of dignity, a lot of commitment to things beautiful, the beautiful side of life. Somewhat of a contributor to the pantheon of great jazz music. I don't know if I've done that yet. That's the thing. I don't know. So I think if there's a legacy at all, it would be having contributed to the repertoire, the integrity with which one, well, I think it's required to uphold the standards of this beautiful idiom. Hopefully I inspire someone to do their thing with it and do it to their best ability. And to know that you're not in this journey alone. This is not an alone journey. You can find yourself feeling very lonesome sometimes, because at the end of the day, when you sit down and you're working at your craft, that's an alone thing.
Absolutely.
That's the gift you give to yourself. But I would like to somehow be thought of as a quality artist with authenticity and integrity and well-meaning. And really, my songs are about love. They sometimes don't necessarily have the word love anywhere in them. Ooh la la. But I would say, yes, that it's just my contribution to this great art form.
Well, as an artist on his journey, I have to say that, yes, there is much more for you to express and give the world. I'm very glad about that. But as far as impacting on another to be the best that I can be, and to be an artist of integrity, and indeed a human being of integrity and depth, mission accomplished. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Lundy. All the best for the Grammys. I think they're in February next year. And I hope we can do this again sometime. Hopefully when you're back in the UK, that would be lovely, just to help.
Oh, yes, before I forget.
Yes.
I'm coming to We Out Here.
Right.
I'm coming to We Out Here in August. So I'll be there.
And as shall I. And hopefully many, many people, I'm sure.
Okay.
Excellent. Ms. Lundy, thank you so much for your time. Continued success, happy Christmas, and all the best going forward. Thank you.
Happy New Year to you too. Mwah.